Hello, you're about to hear Good Morning Seminole, our monthly signature event. Please enjoy.
My name is Samantha Taylor. I am the publisher of Lake Mary Life magazine, and I am thrilled to have been asked to moderate this panel. When I was a little girl, my parents used to let me stay up and watch Nick at Night, and my favorite show was the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And I was obsessed with being Mary Richards one day. And I am so excited to geek out for the next 40 minutes with a bunch of Mary Richardses here on the stage. And I've met some of them already, and I can tell they have spunk. So let's get them up here. Melissa Medalie is Vice President of News for Fox 35. Judith Smelser is President and General Manager of Central Florida Public Media, which until yesterday was known by WMFE. We're going to have you tell us a little bit about that. Susan Wenner with the Sanford Herald, publisher of Sanford Herald. Susan D. Astley, who is the Senior Director of News Florida, and she is with Spectrum News 9 in Tampa and Spectrum News 13 here in Orlando. Anne-Marie Hayward, who is the Market President and Publisher of the Orlando Business Journal. And last but not least, Allison McGinley, who is the News Director of WKMG and Chair of the RTDNA Foundation, which she says she will tell us about later. So there are so many of you, which is so exciting to me, and we were just talking at the table that there could be more. If we had more room on the stage, there could be more directors of other TV stations and other media outlets that are all women, and it's sort of unprecedented in Central Florida, or in the country, that we have this in Central Florida. So let's go down the line. We'll start, Melissa, with you. A little background on each of you, your first position in the news industry, and did you plan this as your career?
Does anyone plan this, Allison, as your career? I don't know. My name's Melissa. I'm originally from a small town in upstate New York. I went to Syracuse University, so I'm a proud Orange, there aren't too many down here. But no, I wanted to be the bulldog reporter. That's what I wanted to do, and I thought I would do that forever. I loved the chase down the sidewalk outside the courthouse. I loved digging up records. I loved the story. And I did that for about 10 years at various markets. And I always got that call from the producer, who's the one who writes the show and puts it together, to say, you should be in here, because I would say, well, before my story, put this, and then after my story, put this, and then you should go and do this, and then we should do this story. So a little bit of a control freak, which we probably all are, a very type A panel up here, and kind of got into, I did so I did that for about 10 years, got into medical news reporting at a national outlet for a couple of years, and then got into management at Fox 35. A news director took a really big chance on me. I had never been a manager at a traditional news station, and he said, you've got something. So I was the executive producer, kind of moved my way up, and I've been the vice president of news for the past 4 years there.
Judith, please.
Well, not only did I not intend to get into management, I didn't intend to get into journalism until I was out of college. I graduated with a degree in international relations, and I was going to be a diplomat. And my first job was as a junior fellow at a think tank in Washington, D.C., and I spoke with all the people that I worked with who'd been in the field for a very long time and realized that actually wasn't what I wanted to do. So then I had to figure out what I wanted to do. Long story short, I ended up in an unpaid internship at a small news agency down the street, and I somehow talked them into hiring me. So that was my first job in journalism. I was there for about 5 years, and then I started to look into public media, because I was one of those kids that grew up in the back seat with my parents listening to public radio. And so I had the sound in my ear, and I was really interested in that, and I started looking around to apply for jobs in public radio stations, and every everyone that was going at the time was in very cold places. Minnesota, Alaska. I grew up in the Dakotas, right? And I grew up in South Georgia, so for me, DC was cold. So I saw this job in Orlando, and I'd been going to Disney, of course, for many years as a kid. So I thought, well, I think I can do Orlando, but I just don't want to get stuck down there, is what I told my mom. That was 20 years ago. So I did go away for a couple years to Colorado and came back. In my case, I was a reporter at WMFE for many years. Then I was promoted to news director, and then got recruited away, went to Colorado Public Radio for a couple of years, was managing editor out there. And I came back because it was cold. I came back and ran a consulting business for about 8 years, where I worked with public media organizations all around the country on strategic design and strategic planning and editing and things like that, and training. Never in a million years, even 3 years ago, if you'd told me that I would be a general manager, I would say you were crazy. I never thought I would step on the other side of the editorial firewall. And we can talk more about what that is if you'd like. But my organization, this organization where I started my public media career, had a need, and I don't know how else to say it, but I felt called to step up and take a leadership role in that organization, and that was 2.5 years ago, and it's been a journey, and it's been great.
I'm Susan Wenner, and I'm with the Sanford Herald. I originally started in the newspaper business kind of by accident. I started freelancing with the Sanford Herald back in 1988, so I'm probably on the little crew here. So I started in 1988 just freelancing, thinking, okay, I'm going to do this to be home with my children, have a little time with them. And then soon after I started freelancing, they offered me a position as the religion editor. So I worked from 88 to 2000 with the Sanford Herald, and then we got bought out by a very large company, so then it was, okay, I got laid off in part of the process of things. So that was a little upsetting, but even back then, I still had this love for the newspaper business, and my husband and I started a business, and then later down the road, there was an opening, it got bought out again by someone locally, so there was an opening in 2014 for another writer again. So I said, oh, I love this business, I gotta get back into it. So I came back in 2014 as the people editor at the Sanford Herald. A few years later, was promoted to the publisher, and I've been the publisher ever since. It's an exciting journey. You get to meet and interview lots of wonderful people. My motto is, everyone has a story, and the most average person you can talk to and find out the most interesting things. So it's a business that is very dear to my heart and I love very much.
My degree is in music education, K through 12. And I put myself through college as a disc jockey and a bartender. When I graduated, I went to school in Michigan. There were no teaching jobs available, particularly not for a music teacher, which is specialized. So I hit the road with my teaching certificate in one hand and my disc jockey tapes in the other hand, figuring I'm going to get a job somewhere. I was headed to California. Stopped in Nashville. Got a job as a late-night disc jockey, rock jock, and got a call from WSM, which is now WSMV in Nashville, and they said, I've been spinning the hits for a while, which was driving me nuts. They said, and I'm still trying to get a job as a teacher, and they said, you have an amazing voice for news. Have you ever thought about doing news? And I'm like, this has got to be better than overnight spinning the hits. So took that, started, it was a 10-person radio station next to, in the same building as the TV station. Worked there, learned it from the ground up, had some wonderful mentors. News director came to me one day and said, hey, you're cute, do you want to be on TV? I am quoting here. I told him no. The second time he approached me, I said, sure. So I worked 7 days a week. 5 days in radio, 2 days in TV reporting as a reporter. then took a job in Knoxville, full-time reporter, anchor, MMJ. I carried a camera for a while until I realized that stuff is heavy. And at some point, I realized that I had found my calling. This is what I wanted to do. I loved storytelling. I loved being on the street. I loved being on the field. I loved the adventure. I loved never knowing what the day would bring. And then took a couple of years off to have kids, wound up on the other side of the camera. And from there, I've been an associate producer, a senior producer, an executive producer, a senior executive producer, an assistant news director, and a news director in a couple of places. It has been an amazing journey. And I still look at what I do and is really, I'm still teaching, right? Just a much bigger classroom.
That's a tough one to follow there, but so I have an entirely different story in the fact that I've been in the media industry for 3 years. So I have
Welcome.
It's okay.
I don't know if I'm a late learner or I just make a lot of bigger mistakes. I'm not quite sure yet, but my first undergraduate degree was in biology. I was accepted to medical school. That was the path I was heading. I met my husband and had to make a decision of medical school or love. We've been together 28 years. I think I chose well, but I actually ended up in the real estate sector, and I spent 25 years in the real estate sector, started as an agent, moved up, and at that point I began consulting and was doing training in organizational development. I have a master's degree in organizational development, so began working those pieces of things, and it was 3 years ago that I was recruited by the then publisher of the Orlando Business Journal as the vice president of advertising. I had a sales background. I don't know what she did to get me there, but she got me there. And so I spent about a year and a half, almost 2 years in that role. She stepped aside as publisher, and then I was promoted a year ago to the publisher and market president for Orlando Business Journal. So never did I ever think that this is a place I would be. I have kids that are in college right now that are trying to figure out, what they want to be when they grow up. And I have to laugh because I said, don't even try. Just follow the path and go where it's going to go. So a little bit different story, but I have a passion for the people. Being able to talk to people in our community and in our business community, to hear their stories, to hear what keeps them up at night and makes them think about what's next. Being able to be that connector of people within our community is something that I think is a really powerful gift to have, and I'm blessed to be able to do it every day.
It's fascinating. We all have such different paths. So I grew up here in Central Florida. Grew up reading the newspaper with my dad at my home in Eustis. I saw the Eustis Roofing Company. So if you're here, go Panthers. Started my high school television news organization back in 1990-something. And went to UCF and got an internship at WKMG, which was then WCPX. I have been there for 30 years this April. I went to college on Tuesdays and Thursdays. UCF used to be a very big commuter college, and I would go to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 in the morning until 9 at night, and I would work Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the assignment desk, which is where all of the information really comes through. It's kind of the heartbeat of the newsroom. Over time, grew from assignment editor to associate producer to producer. Like Melissa, I liked being in charge of 30 minutes, not 2 minutes. I thought I could go be a reporter. I could tell 2-minute stories, but why not have the control over the entire 30-minute product? So became a producer. I, too, took a break to take care of my boys. My oldest was born in 2004. You all will remember, if you've lived here long enough, that we had 3 hurricanes in 6 weeks. I had a 6-month-old with his first fever, his first illness. I was sleeping on a concrete floor at the television station over and over and over again, and I said, after 2 hurricanes, I said, I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and I'm going to take care of my infant son, and I'm going to give you 30 days notice, because that's the kind of gal I am. And we had a third hurricane. And I said, okay, God, I got you. It's time for a break. Took a 5-year hiatus where I worked in freelance producing, always stayed connected to the television station, produced specials, and at the time we did editorials. Came back, became an investigative producer, became executive producer of special projects, and 9 years ago this June became the news director at WKMG. So I'm very pleased to be a part of that organization. Thank you. For as long as I've had the opportunity and the blessing to tell the stories of the place that I grew up. And journalism means so much to me that I joined the group RTDNA, which is the Radio, Television, Digital News Association, about a decade ago, took part in leadership, and our organization is First Amendment advocates, which is becoming more and more important than ever before. We train young journalists, we train young leaders. When we were leaders, we needed help learning what was expected of us in a newsroom, and we also award excellence in journalism. So some of you may have heard of some guy named, Edward R. Murrow. We give away Murrow Awards to spectacular journalism that is done across this country every single day. So thank you very much for having all of us.
Even though you all had very different paths, I noticed two themes. Lots of hard work, 7 days a week. How many of you said you worked 7 days a week? And balancing that family and the work, because it's just, we know that's the burden of being a woman in business, right? So let's talk about that. Melissa, why do you think that women are so prevalent in news in Central Florida? And is it the same in other cities?
No, I tried to look into this as you gave us this. I don't think it is as prevalent as it is here. I'd like to say they're really smart here in Central Florida. But I also think Orlando is such a dynamic media market. We have stories that captivate the nation's attention. We have stories that affect your pocketbook, right? And I think women do a really great job of understanding the broader vision of what people want. At the end of the day, we're all in the customer service business, just like many of you. We need to serve our viewers every day. That's the mission. We don't go in saying, that's what I go in every day to work saying, how can I serve my viewer? What do they need? What do they want? What do they want to see and hear, and how can we help them? I think women have a really innate vision of what that looks like some days. And because a lot of times they're the leaders of the household, they're the leaders of, bank accounts and thinking that way, I think that puts us in a really good position to kind of meet those needs. I don't know if that's what all our bosses are thinking about when they made these decisions, but I'm really proud to sit on this panel. Because I think all these women think about that every day. At the end of the day, we are serving a community. We take it very seriously, and that's our customer, right? And so, I think it puts us in a really unique spot, and I think that's why you've seen the longevity here. I think that when you think about, how you're going to get a return on an investment, because let's face it, we're all in a business here. The longevity comes when you do it the right way, when you serve the community, and that's your first initial, point of why you do this every day. And I think, these women are a testament to doing that every day, and that speaks to the longevity here.
You did a great job. Does anyone else want to chime in with that?
I would love to pick up on what you're saying because, we're a nonprofit, so public media. Central Florida Public Media, formerly known as WMFE, is a nonprofit, independent nonprofit, so we have to serve the community. That is our remit because 90% of our budget comes from you, from the community. And we have a line in our vision statement that talks about doing journalism that's grounded in listening. And that has nothing to do with you listening to us on the radio or on the podcast. That has to do with us listening to you. And I think we in the news business have generally done a pretty good job of telling you what we think you need to know, but not such a great job of asking you what you need to know and responding to that. And so, I think it's a bit of a stereotype to say, oh, women are nurturing and women are great listeners and all of that, but there's some truth in that. And so I think that there's some of that. Now, why it happened that so many news organizations here are led by women, who knows? I mean, I don't think it was by design. I also think, though, that it's important to make a distinction between news leadership and executive leadership of organizations. So several of us who are sitting here are or have been news directors. I have been. Now I'm the top executive at my organization. And I think that's where there's still some work to do in the news business.
A lot of work.
A lot of work. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I think, in public media, it's historically been a very friendly place for women. People like Nina Totenberg and Susan Stanberg, we call them our founding mothers at NPR at the national level. But NPR has only had 2 women CEOs. Now, of course, NPR is a completely separate organization than the member organizations like Central Florida Public Media. But even within those local organizations, when I sit in rooms of my peers across the public media system, there are more women than there used to be, but I still feel kind of alone. And so I think that's really an important distinction to make and a place where there's growth to be done.
There are, in the country, RTDNA survey, probably workforce in journalism, 44% are women, 30% are at news director level or higher. When I started in this business, back when I stepped across to the other side of the camera, I remember sitting at a table. It was me, this girl, and a whole bunch of white guys in short sleeve shirts, bad ties. Everybody was smoking at the time. But I can remember saying, there's something wrong with this picture. This is not the right balance. It should be at least 50-50. And here we are a number of years later. I've been in the business for 40 years, so it's still not even. And that's my question. This is an anomaly to have basically every major outlet here is run by a woman. This is an anomaly. I wish it were more like that in other areas of the country.
I think it's a good point. So Orlando Business Journal is actually one of 44 markets across the country. 40 markets have a market president and publisher, which is the executive leadership role within that, and 13 of us are women. So there is still work to be done, but I think you're right about Orlando being an anomaly. I moved here 7 years ago from Boston, and I remember coming in and the first event, and a woman invited me to go to a woman's event, and from Boston, like, that's, we're not like that, right? So I kind of did one of these and a little bit of a side eye of like, what do you want? And I very quickly learned that Orlando as a women's community, Greater Central Florida as a women's community is phenomenal and unlike anything I've ever seen, and I've moved around quite a bit. So, we just are at the tail end of Women's History Month, and that came up. I'm exhausted from all the events that there were throughout the month of March, and yet I'm so incredibly proud of the investment that not only the women in this community make, but the men make to help elevate those women as well, right? That true equality that comes in there, and I'm really proud of that.
I'm going to jump in here since I got skipped. What I see in this industry, too, is my husband and I do marriage ministry, and part of that training talks a lot about kind of the differences in men and women and how we were designed. And what I see is men tend to think with their heads, women think with their hearts. And when you talked about serving people, women tend to have more of a servant's heart. And when I see it, women put a lot of heart into this industry, and women put a lot of soul into this industry. So I see that. I also see a lot of women multitasking. And not that you men don't do that, but we are used to balancing home, balancing children, balancing work, balancing everything. And so I think the multitasking aspect, I know even in what I'm doing now, I'm the circulation director. I handle a lot of that. I do our social media. I write for the newspaper. I'm the people editor. I'm also the publisher. So I'm multitasking constantly. So I see that multitasking aspect there too, where women, we do that well. And I think that's a testament to, we wear a lot of hats. So, and I think I also just see, when you think about, men, like I said, men think with their heads, women think with their hearts. I think that when we're going after a story, we look and dig deep. And so I think that that's recognized among our peers, how we are really looking deep into a story and we put everything into it.
One of the stereotypes of women is that we talk a lot, and that seems to be true because we have gotten through 2 questions, and we're almost out of time. Allison, I'm going to ask you, how would you describe the state of the industry today? And I mean, we have, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have phones where if Taylor Swift sneezes, we can get an alert on our phone. We have the internet. How has it changed?
Definitely.
How has it not changed,
right?
I think. And I think there's 2 ways that I can also answer that question. I think the way you all live your lives, the way you consume information has changed dramatically. Therefore, that has changed our jobs. For many of us on this dais, we are charged with creating and sharing information on at least 4 platforms. So traditional broadcast television, newspapers, please make sure that you're subscribing to your local newspaper. It's really important.
Yes.
And magazines. Yes, ma'am. Traditional broadcast, digital platforms, social media outlets, streaming channels now, YouTube channels, managing the level and fire hose of information that comes at us, that is required of us to digest and work through and make sure is accurate and then place back out there in all of those places. When I took over leadership at WKMG, we had a broadcast and a website. That was it. And now, that job, that is a 28/8 kind of job. It is never ending. I also think, especially post-COVID, those of us that are leading newsrooms or full organizations, our jobs have changed from the compassion side of things. No longer are we driving our teams to go, go, go. We are recognizing, and I think when we speak about the compassion side of a female, there is that instinct for us to go, how are you? That was a question that was never asked in newsrooms when I was growing up through them. Nobody cared how I was doing. It did not matter. It was get the job done, get the show done, get the story done. And now we are charged with, oftentimes I joke, I need a couch in my office because my young folks who are coming into this market, we are now the 16th market in the nation. We used to be the 3rd or 4th stop for a journalist. The way things are going now, we are generally a 2nd stop. The younger kids are going to school younger. They're graduating younger, thanks to AP and advanced dual enrollment, things like that. We're getting folks exposed to our newsrooms in one of the top markets in the nation, and they have almost no life experience. And so when we talk about serving our audience, as Melissa so beautifully put that, our community is made up of a very diverse community with different levels of experience in their own lives, different backgrounds, different age groups, different ethnicities. And young people, until you've had a mortgage, you haven't had a mortgage. You haven't had to put food on the table. You don't understand what a property tax is or an HOA means to your life. So having those in-depth, consequential conversations in an editorial room are becoming, we are teachers not only for our communities, we are teachers for our newsrooms, and at the end of the day, on occasion, we are pseudo-parents for our staff. And I do not mean that in any disrespect to these individuals, because the people that work in my newsroom are driven and passionate and smart and creative, but they are younger and they have a greater sense of self and what matters to them, and when they're hurting, how they can and cannot do their jobs. And I'll put a pin in this with the last thing, that the things that Orlando has seen in the last 7 years to cover these stories is painful. It's painful to live through them, but it is painful to cover them day in and day out. And so as females who lead these newsrooms, we are driven to better care for them and ensure that in caring for them, they are caring for themselves, and then they are being of greater service to you as a community.
Yeah.
Since we are running short on time, this is one of my favorite questions. We're going to do rapid fire. Melissa, we're going to start with you. What is your favorite story that your outlet has covered?
This is a hard one, but I know rapid fire. I'm proud of, we cover, hundreds of stories, even sometimes in a day. But recently, the best stories come to us from our viewers, from people who reach out, who say, I need help. A woman did that with a disabled daughter who went through TSA at Sanford Airport here in our backyard. Did not have a good experience. It was quite honestly awful. And our story got the entire TSA retrained off-site at the airport. And those kinds of stories, matter. So that's one I'm really proud of.
So important. Yes, Judith.
I'm going to try to, I know you're going to hate that I'm going to do this, but I need to speak to the previous question very quickly before we wrap up. You asked about the state of the industry, and I think it's really important for everyone to understand that the state of the industry is challenging, and we should all be worried about this. Over the past 20 years, 1,800 communities in this nation that used to have a local news source no longer do. Half of the number of journalists are covering their communities compared to 20 or 30 years ago. That's half the number of people keeping an eye on your city councils, on our elected representatives, on our businesses, on the people, and telling the stories of the people around us. Our communities are going to have to take ownership of this because the business model that supported journalism for the past many generations has crumbled. And so we're going to need our business and philanthropic communities to step up and to take a lead and to take ownership and support local journalism in the same way that you've supported the arts and healthcare and education and the social service sector. And we all on this stage have to work together to build a strong and sustainable local journalism ecosystem that is future-proof. So, with that said, the story that jumps out at me that Central Florida Public Media has created over the past year, we created a biannual project called Central Florida Seen and Heard. And this is a week, twice a year, when we shine a spotlight on an important issue for the region and look at it through the eyes of people affected by that issue. So last year, we did the first of these on immigration, examining the effects of the new immigration laws that had just been passed. And we looked at it through the eyes of undocumented immigrants, and getting undocumented immigrants to trust our journalists enough to tell their stories is in itself a challenge. So we were able to do that and look at various aspects from healthcare to education and more of the impacts of these laws. And then we took those stories out to the immigrant community because we understand that many of them are not in our audience. And so we went to the Hope Community Center in Apopka, and we had an event where we basically told these stories for the audience that was directly affected by them. We cannot expect that if we build it, they will come anymore. In this new media landscape that Allison so eloquently described, we have to go to them, and we're committed to doing that at Central Florida Public Media.
Favorite story.
That's good. I love the stories that we do on Habitat for Humanity. I think it's a wonderful organization, so I do love those stories. But I've just got to be a little selfish here. I love the part of media where you get to meet some really neat people. And so years ago, I interviewed Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley from KISS. And my husband's a big fan. And but they're not all just rock and roll. They started Rock and Brews in Oviedo. avid supporters of the veterans, especially in Central Florida, but all over the United States. So that was a lot of fun. Roma Downey Jr., I interviewed her. She was with Touched by an Angel. Just the wonderful works that she's doing and all over the world, really. And Willie Robertson, some of the charities that he was involved in, the Harlem Globetrotters was just such a fun interview, and they're all over the world too. And all of these big names, that's the fun in this organization and in the media, to get to meet these people and realize that they're just not this face that's on your screen, whether it be the television screen or in the theater. Many of these people are doing really great works within the world. And so I love hearing those stories of those big names that are out there helping people.
I'm going to echo Judith. Local news is in trouble. Mm-hmm. And it is a local news. Journalists make a difference. The stories that we tell, and I tell this to my folks, the stories that we tell, the images that we choose all make a difference in coverage. And if we are not there to keep an eye on the politicians, to tell amazing stories about the people in our community who make a difference, it would be a tremendous loss. I remember standing in a country where there was not free journalism and there were people with machine guns on every corner. That is what happens when you don't have a free press and when you don't have local journalism. It is so, so important. I struggled with the idea of what is my favorite story, because I love so much of what we do. Spectrum News is focused on storytelling. I think this year what I'm proud of, and it's an insane year, it is a divisive year. We launched a nightly political show, and with the notion that, can we put things into context? Can we help folk understand and navigate without bias all of the different issues, not necessarily the horse race, but the issues that are facing all of us. Or the price of property insurance, my car insurance doubled. Why are eggs going up? All of these things to truly help understand those. So I think that is right now what I'm most proud of. And the storytelling that goes along with that, we did a deep dive into what's happening with Medicare and benefits and people being taken off of that. And this mom, Your Community, Your Vote, is part of the feature. Jeff Allen, who is our political reporter. This mom, my heart broke watching that story because she's trying to figure out, she managed to pull her kid through almost dying from cancer. Well, because of the chemotherapy, he now needs all manner of therapy, and they're going to cut him off. And it's, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and people don't have that kind of money. So what do we do? So it's helping to navigate. That story just really, I sat there and cried. Okay, I cry sometimes. But that's the thing. Support local journalism. It is so, so important. It is a crazy year, whatever side, wherever you are. It's important that we support one another and understand that journalism makes a difference. And I'm getting off my soapbox right now. I'm handing it over to Anne-Marie.
6 women on 6 soapboxes.
I know. Yes. I'll go quick because I know we're cognizant of time. I do reiterate the need for the support of journalism in a market, but I think our favorite story, we report on a different lens. We're a business news publication, and we have a very a mission statement that is our guiding star, right? And to help business leaders, business owners grow their businesses, simplify their lives, and advance their careers. So I think my favorite story in the past year is our former editor actually rode the Bright Line the first day it was open, and our entire newsroom came together. So we had interactive mapping. He interviewed people on the train. He tested out the Wi-Fi and did all of these things to report back on, did it work as a business transportation element of things? And we were really proud of that. And it's been named as a finalist by the Florida Press Association this year. So that's a story that we're really proud of.
At WKMG, we are the Getting Results station. That is something that we have lived and breathed for almost a decade now. We've done a number of stories that have changed laws, that have gotten results for people when they don't even recognize it, whether it's law enforcement getting the PTSD coverage that they so desperately need, or getting people during COVID $1 million+ back due to the unemployment system that failed at the time. But ultimately, my favorite story that we have ever done and managed to change the law on impacts every single one of you in this room. You all have a cell phone. You see people texting and driving regularly. We communicated with the community after our anchor was hit and seriously injured by a texting driver. We talked with hundreds of individuals across Central Florida, and they shared their texting and driving stories. And because of that, several years ago, it became illegal to text and drive, especially hands-free. It became a first offense, and especially in school zones and construction zones, where your children, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews walk to school, where construction zones, those people are husbands and wives and aunts and uncles, and their lives are in danger because we can't wait to communicate with somebody else. And so I will forever be proud of that. And the NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, awarded us with a Service to America award for that one, along with a PTSD coverage for our law enforcement officers. And that just speaks volumes to the power of local journalism.
Well, we got through 3 questions. Congratulations. We are out of time. Thank you all so much. I had a wonderful time. I hope everyone enjoyed.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about the Seminole County Chamber, please visit seminolebusiness.org or check us out on our social media at Seminole County Chamber.